The black car rolled through the iron gates at 2:47 in the afternoon, and the whole mansion just settled, like it felt something coming and didn't know yet whether to brace or breathe. Hans Seolim was already standing at the top of the stone steps, hands folded, back straight. She'd been with this family 22 years, and in 22 years she had learned that this house had a way of telling you things before they happened. A shift in the air, a particular quality of quiet. She felt it now, watching the car door open, and she didn't know what to do with it, so she just stood there and watched. A woman stepped out. Tall, deep brown skin, natural hair pulled back in a loose bun that looked like she'd done it without a mirror and gotten it perfect anyway. Navy coat, cream blouse, small gold studs in her ears. She had one bag over her shoulder, and she moved without rushing, not slow, just unhurried. Like someone who had already made peace with whatever was waiting inside before she ever left her house that morning. Seolim descended the steps, studying her, because that was the job really, not the cooking or the scheduling or the linen. The job was watching and protecting and knowing. "Miss Okoye," she said, "welcome to the Shin residence." The woman looked up at the house first. All 3 floors, the dark windows, the perfect hedges, the kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful so much as held. Then she looked at Seolim with steady, unhurried eyes. "Thank you," she said. Her English was clean, American accented from years abroad. "It's a beautiful home." "It is," Seolim agreed. And then, before she could stop herself, "It used to be louder." She hadn't meant to say that. She wasn't sure why she did. But the woman didn't ask her to explain it. She just nodded, slowly, like she already understood the shape of what hadn't been said. They went inside. The house was exactly what you'd expect from a man like Shinju Shin. Precise. Intentional. Marble floors that clicked under your heels. A staircase that curved upward like it was going somewhere important. White flowers in tall vases. Always white. Always fresh. Nobody had changed that in 5 years, and nobody intended to. Art on the walls that was expensive and careful and told you absolutely nothing about the people who lived there. No family photographs. Not one. Not anywhere in the common areas. Bella noticed that right away. Seolim was walking her through. Kitchen here, children's dining area, playroom at the end of the east wing, schedule on the refrigerator in Korean and English, when Bella stopped mid-step. "Is there a photo of the boys somewhere? So I know their faces before I meet them." Seolim hesitated. "Mr. Shin will introduce you shortly." "I know. Bella paused, choosing her words. Children settle faster when they can tell you already knew them. Even a little. It signals safety. Seolim looked at her for a moment. Then she reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her phone. Found a photo from 6 months back. A birthday party. The twins with frosting somewhere it shouldn't be. Bright eyes. Their father's jaw. Their mother's everything else. Duyel stood slightly apart from the camera, watching something off to the left with that old soul gravity he was born with. Haeon stood front and center with cake on his face and looked absolutely delighted about it. Bella took the phone, looked at the photo, and something moved across her face. Quick, complicated. Something she folded away so fast Seolim almost missed it. Almost. "Thank you," Bella said softly, handing it back. They kept walking. Jushin came home at 5 o'clock, same as always. The car pulled up, the door opened, and he stepped out loosening his tie before he'd even hit the top step. Charcoal suit. A face that had been handsome once in an easy way and now was handsome in a harder one. The way a thing gets when it's been through weather. 38 years old, and carrying every one of them somewhere, just behind his eyes. He stopped when he saw Bella in the entrance hall. She didn't step back, didn't look away, just extended her hand and said, "Mr. Shin, I'm Bella Okoye." He shook it. Once. "I know who you are." He handed his jacket to Seolim without looking at her. "My cousin's report was detailed. The boys' schedule is on the kitchen board. Their dietary restrictions are in the binder on the counter." He was already moving. Duyel has a shellfish allergy. It's documented. Haeon gets nightmares if he has sugar after 6. The last nanny ignored that twice. A pause. "She no longer works here." "Understood," Bella said. "The boys are in the playroom. I'll take you." He walked. She followed. The east corridor ended at a yellow door. The only yellow door in the entire house. It hit different in all that gray and white. Jarring, almost. Like whoever painted it had been making a point. Jushin pushed it open. Lego bricks clicking. A cartoon low on the TV. Haeyeon's voice narrating something to absolutely no one, the way he always did. Boys. Duyol looked up immediately. Quiet. Watchful. Haeyeon snapped another 2 Legos together, purely on principle, then looked up too. This is Miss Bella. Jushin kept his voice steady. Even. The same voice he used for every introduction now, because he had learned a long time ago not to build something up before it had a chance to survive. She's going to be staying with us. To help take care of you. Silence. The twins looked at Bella. And then something happened that Jushin would spend the next 3 weeks trying to explain to himself in rational, manageable terms, and failing every single time. Duyol stood up from the floor. Slowly. The way a child moves when something deep inside them shifts without permission. His face went through several things in about 4 seconds. Confusion, then something like recognition, then something that looked a whole lot like relief. The specific relief of a breath finally let out after being held for way too long. Haeyeon was already moving. He crossed the room in 6 running steps and crashed into Bella's legs with everything he had. Both arms locked around her, face buried deep in her coat. And then he just broke. Started crying. Not the kind from a bad dream or a scraped knee. The kind that comes from somewhere a 5-year-old shouldn't even have access to yet. Deep and real and old. Mommy came back, he sobbed. Mommy came back. Mommy came back. Bella's bag slipped off her shoulder. Duyol had reached her by then. He didn't cry. He just pressed himself into her side, wrapped both arms around her waist, and closed his eyes. Like he was done. Like he could finally just stop. The room went completely still. Jushin had not moved. His hand was still on the doorframe. He was looking at his sons like he was watching something happen in a language he'd never been taught and couldn't look away from. Bella stood with both boys pressed against her and her arms coming up, slowly, like she hadn't decided to do it, like her body just knew, and her eyes were open and fixed on nothing, and her face was doing too many things at once. Shock, grief, something fierce and something terrified, all of it wound together so tight you couldn't separate one from the other. She had never seen these children before today. That was what she would say. That was what she kept saying to herself, standing there in that yellow-doored room. She had never seen them before. Sir. Seolim's voice came from just behind Jushin's shoulder, barely above a whisper. She just walked in. How is she? I don't know, he said quietly. He looked at Bella across the room. And Bella, holding both boys, looked back at him. Neither of them spoke. There was nothing to say that would have fit inside that moment. Nothing that would have been enough. The only sounds were Haeyeon still crying softly into her coat, and Duyol breathing like he'd finally stopped running from something. Jushin put the boys to bed himself that night. Read to them. Sat in the blue lamp glow of their room until their breathing evened out. Then stayed a few minutes longer than he needed to, just looking at their faces in the dark. Then he went to find Bella. She was in the kitchen, sitting at the counter with a cup of tea she wasn't drinking, staring at the window over the sink. She looked up when he came in. Not guilty, not defensive. She looked like someone sitting in the middle of something enormous, quietly trying to figure out its shape. He pulled out the stool across from her and sat down. I'm going to ask you something, he said, and I need a straight answer. All right. Have you ever had any contact with my sons before today? Any contact at all? Online? Through an agency? Through anyone even loosely connected to this family? No, she said. You understand why I'm asking. Yes. Children don't behave that way with strangers. His voice was controlled, but only just. My children especially. Duyol hasn't voluntarily touched someone outside this household in over a year. He held her gaze. What happened in that room is not normal. I know, she said. So explain it to me. She looked down at her tea, sat with that for a moment, then looked back up. I can't explain it. I've been sitting here trying to. I don't have an answer for what those boys did. She paused. But I can tell you it shook me too. Whatever you think you saw on my face in there, you saw it right. He studied her. He'd been reading people his whole career, looking for the seam, the place where the performance came through. He didn't find one. 1 week trial, he said finally. If the boys are stable and their routine holds, we reassess. That's fair. He stood. Don't encourage the attachment. Whatever happened today, don't lean into it. And don't let them call you that again. Bella looked up at him steadily. I didn't ask them to. He left the kitchen. Lay in his bed that night, staring at the ceiling. Thought about Miran the way he always did. The particular way she hummed over a book she liked, the sound of her voice that last morning on the phone, the wet road outside Incheon, the call that came after. And then he thought about Haeon wrapped around a stranger's legs saying mommy came back, and how Ju-shin had stood in that doorway and felt, for just 3 seconds, something loosen in his chest that had been locked for 5 years. He didn't sleep well. The first week passed strangely. The boys were different with Bella in ways that were hard to ignore and even harder to categorize. Do-yeol, who hadn't let anyone but his father read to him in over a year, started talking. Not constantly. He was still a quiet kid by nature. But he talked to her, showed her things. His drawings kept in a worn notebook under his bed. A rock collection on the windowsill organized by a system only he fully understood. A worry he had about a book character whose ending he couldn't predict yet. Haeon was Haeon, loud, opinionated, a lot, but softer at the edges around her. Still testing limits the way he always did, but testing them the way a kid tests limits with someone they actually want to stick around. There was a difference. Seolam saw it. Ju-shin saw it too, though he said nothing about it. On Wednesday, Bella was setting out the afternoon snack when Do-yeol pushed his bowl aside and said, simply, "Where's the medicine?" Bella frowned. "What medicine, baby?" "The pink one. For when my tummy feels like it's turning over." Bella hadn't been told about a stomach medicine. It wasn't in the binder. She looked around the kitchen once, and then, without fully deciding to, opened the cabinet above the refrigerator. The high one. The one small hands couldn't reach. She reached to the very back, behind a box of herbal tea, and found a small bottle of children's antacid. Pink. Barely used. She stood there with it in her hand. How had she known to look there? She didn't know. Her hand had moved before her brain caught up. She gave Do-yeol the right dose. Said nothing about it. But that night she sat on the edge of her bed and pressed her palms flat on her knees and breathed. Slowly, carefully, and let herself think about things she had spent 5 years training herself not to think about. Ju-shin's investigation into Bella's background started on day 4. He was quiet about it. Used a private security consultant, a man named Park who filed clean reports and asked no unnecessary questions. This wasn't malice. It was fatherhood. It was being the only thing standing between 2 small boys and whatever the world decided to send through the door next. The report came back clean. Bella Okoye, Lagos-born, educated in Ibadan, then a master's at Johns Hopkins. A career in neonatal and early childhood care across 3 continents. No record. No red flags. No known connection to the Shin family. But there was one thing. A gap. A 7-month stretch about 5 years back where her movements were sparse. Not missing. She'd been in Nigeria, that much was traceable. But no conference registrations, no hospital affiliations, no published work. Like she'd quietly stepped off the map. Ju-shin read that section twice. 5 years ago. The twins were 5 years old. He called Taegwon. "There's a gap in her record," he said when his cousin picked up. 7 months. 5 years ago. "I need to know what she was doing." A beat of silence. "You think she's connected to Miran?" Ju-shin didn't answer that directly. "I want to know everything. Don't approach her yet. Just find out." On Friday of the 2nd week, Bella found the nursery. She wasn't looking for it. She was carrying fresh towels down the 2nd-floor hallway when she noticed a door set back in a shallow alcove she'd walked past every day without registering. White like all the others. But there was a strip of light underneath it, and a faint smell, dried rose petals and cedar, faint and old. She stood there. She should keep walking. She opened the door. The room inside was empty. Whatever furniture it had had was gone. But the walls were still the color someone had chosen back when they were hopeful, a warm blush pink, the kind you pick when you're imagining something good. One shelf on the far wall. A folded receiving blanket, soft yellow. A dried flower arrangement in a glass jar. White roses gone the color of old paper. A small photo frame, face down. Bella walked to the shelf. She turned the frame over. The woman looking back at her was Korean. Maybe 28, 29 in the photo. She was laughing at whoever held the camera. Head tilted back slightly. Eyes bright. Beautiful the way some people are beautiful, not arranged, just lit from inside. Bella sat down on the floor of that empty pink room and held the photograph in both hands and cried without sound. The practiced, careful way you cry when you've spent years learning not to fall apart where people might hear you. Because she knew that face. She had held that woman's hand in a Lagos clinic at 3 in the morning when everything was going wrong and the doctors were moving fast, and the only thing Miran had asked for, between contractions and fear, was for someone to stay. Bella had stayed. She put the photo back face down exactly as she'd found it, left the room, pulled the door shut, stood in the hallway and breathed until she was steady. That night she sat at her window and thought about the promise, the hand gripping hers, the voice saying, please, if something happens, find them. Don't let them grow up not knowing. She thought about the calls she'd made after the news broke, the emails that bounced, the contact information that went dead one by one, like someone going through and cutting every wire. She had tried for a year, and then, somehow, out of every city and every agency and every road her life could have taken, she'd ended up standing in a yellow-doored playroom while 2 little boys cried into her coat. She didn't believe in coincidence. She believed in Miran. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday. 3 weeks in, Tag 1 had found the connection, a women's health conference in Abuja, years back, where both Bella and CO Miran appeared in the same registry. The gap in Bella's record overlapped almost exactly with Miran's final pregnancy, and Miran's last international phone records showed 12 calls to a Lagos number registered to the private clinic where Bella had worked. Jushin came to Bella at 9 that evening. Twins were in bed. CO Lime had disappeared the way she always did when something important was about to happen. He set a folder on the kitchen table between them and didn't sit down. I know you knew her, he said. Bella looked at the folder, looked at him, and she didn't flinch. Yes, she said. How long? We met at a conference in Abuja 7 years ago. Kept in touch. She folded her hands on the table. She contacted me 4 years before she died. During the pregnancy, there were complications, and she didn't want to be in Seoul for them. She came to Lagos and I arranged private care. Jushin's hands were flat on the table, perfectly still. She was in Lagos. For months. During the pregnancy. Yes. You didn't tell anyone. She asked me not to. Bella held his gaze. She was scared, Jushin. Not just about the pregnancy. She was watching her phone. She was careful about who she called. She made me promise to keep her real name out of the clinic records. She paused. She was frightened in a way that didn't fit a woman who was just having a difficult pregnancy. Something was wrong before she ever got on that plane. The kitchen was very quiet. She told you about me, he said. Yes. What did she say? Bella's voice dropped slightly. She said she loved you. She said you were the most controlled person she'd ever loved, and that watching that control crack was the thing she was most afraid of. A pause. She said don't let him close himself off. She said it like she already knew it was a possibility. Jushin looked away. At the window. At the Seoul skyline reflected in the dark glass. His jaw was tight, and his shoulders had a particular stillness that wasn't calm. The stillness of something working very hard to hold its shape. She gave me something before she left, Bella said. A voice recording. On a separate phone she kept private. She said if anything happened to her, and it couldn't be explained, I needed to find someone who'd know what to do with it. She met his eyes. She'd found financial fraud inside Shin Group. Siphon accounts. Fabricated records. She said someone very close to the company had been stealing for years. That she'd confronted them. And that after she did, she didn't feel safe anymore. The air in the room changed. Like a pressure drop before weather. Jushin went very still. Who? She didn't say a name on the recording. But she told me what she knew. Bella held his gaze. She died 2 months after she got back to Seoul. I tried to reach the family. Emails bounced. Calls went to voicemail. I sent a letter in Korean to the Shin Group offices. She paused. I never heard back. Someone made sure of that. He was quiet for a long time. Then, almost to himself, Yoon Esarok was managing internal communications when I was, after the accident, for months, he handled everything. He turned around, and his face was the face of a man who has just understood that the ground he's been standing on has been hollow the whole time. 15 years, he said. More to himself than to her. 15 years. Bella didn't fill that silence. She just let him have the full weight of it, because that was the only decent thing to do. After a long moment, he came back to the table and sat down. I need to hear the recording, he said. Bella produced the phone the next evening. A small old Samsung in a Ziploc bag, kept at the bottom of her toiletries case for 5 years. She set it on his desk and stepped back. They listened together. Miran's voice came through clear. A little tired, but steady. She'd been careful that day, had gotten close enough to capture the conversation without being seen. The audio was imperfect, but usable. Two men's voices. Yoon Se-rock's, unmistakable. An accountant Ju Shin recognized immediately. Discussing numbers with the easy familiarity of men who had stopped being afraid of what they were doing a long time ago. Then, at the end, Miran's voice again. Speaking directly into the phone. Ju Shin. A breath. My love, if you're hearing this, then I wasn't careful enough, and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Her voice was steady, but only just. Please don't let them make you doubt yourself. This isn't your fault. You trusted him because I trusted him too, and we were both wrong. A pause. Take care of our boys. Love them loud. Don't let the house go quiet. Another pause, longer. Give Do-yeol his green blanket when he's sad. Tell Haeon he doesn't have to be so loud to be seen. He'll understand that when he's older. A silence. I love you. I love you. The recording ended. Ju Shin had one hand over his mouth. His shoulders were doing that barely, they're shaking, small and controlled, like a building in a minor tremor, like a man doing everything in his power to hold the walls up. He got up and walked to the window. Bella stayed where she was. Didn't speak. Didn't try to close the distance with words, because some things don't need that. Some things just need to be felt in full before anyone tries to move. After a while he came back. Sat down. His eyes were red at the rims, but his voice, when it came, was level. We build the case clean, he said. Take 1. The archived audit files. We do this right. Agreed, Bella said quietly. He looked at her then. Not the way he'd been looking at her for weeks. That careful measuring look, the one with all the walls behind it. This was different. Stripped back. Real. Why did you actually come here, he said. Not an accusation. Just a question. Finally just a question. Not the job. The real reason. She was quiet for a moment. Because I made her a promise and I failed it for 5 years, she said. And then this listing appeared and I kept talking myself out of applying, and I applied anyway. She looked at her hands. I needed to know they were okay. They weren't, he said. Before you came. They weren't okay. She looked up. He nodded once. Slow. Like it cost him something to say it out loud. They weren't. What followed was 4 weeks of careful, quiet work. Take 1, pulling financial threads. Ju Shin cross-referencing records he'd kept archived for 5 years without knowing what he was looking for. Bella doing what she did best, keeping the household steady, keeping the twins loved and fed and laughing, holding the whole thing together from the inside while the earthquake happened beneath the floors. She and Ju Shin talked in the evenings. After the boys were down, in the kitchen or his study. Long conversations that started with the case and drifted. What Miran had been like in Lagos, her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she'd argued with the nurses and charmed them in the same breath. What the boys had been like as newborns. What Ju Shin had been like before. You used to laugh more, Seolam told him one morning, and he'd looked at her for a long moment and said nothing, because they both knew she was right. One afternoon Seolam was folding laundry with Bella when she said, without looking up, he expected someone manageable. Someone who'd stay in the professional lane and not cause turbulence. Bella glanced at her, and Seolam folded a small shirt with practiced hands. You caused turbulence from the first 5 minutes. A pause. The house is warmer. I thought you should know that. Bella didn't answer, but she didn't argue either. Then Yoon Se-rock made his move. Thursday evening. Bella went to check on the boys at 7:15 and Do-yeol was there, curled around his green blanket, already out. But Haeon's side was empty. Covers thrown back. Small shoes gone from the floor. She checked the bathroom, the playroom, the kitchen. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A photo. Haeon sitting in what looked like a car seat, looking around with wide, confused eyes. Not hurt. Not restrained. Just somewhere he didn't recognize, with no idea how he'd gotten there. A second message. 3 words and a demand. The recording. Tonight. She called Ju Shin. He was in a meeting. Picked up first ring. She told him. Flat. Fast. Clear. 3 seconds of silence. Then his voice came back changed. Not panicked, but worse than panic. Something cold and deliberate and razor-focused. Don't respond to them, he said. I'm coming home. Call Tae-gwon right now. He was home in 19 minutes. Tae-gwon arrived 4 minutes after that with 2 people Bella didn't know. Private security, she gathered, from the way they moved, and said almost nothing. Ju Shin went through the house with a controlled, aimed energy that she had never seen on him before and hoped she'd never see again. Everything stripped down to the one necessary thing. He and Bella stood in the kitchen while Taegwon worked his phones. "He knows we've been building the case," Jushin said. "He has someone on the inside." "Yes, we deal with that after." He looked at her. "Think. Anything Miran told you. Any detail about Iraq's private properties. Places he'd use for something like this." Bella pressed her palms to the counter. Pulled back through 5 years of conversations. Late nights in a clinic corridor. The specific things Miran said about the people in her soul life. She mentioned a property once, Bella said slowly. A villa. His mother's side of the family. She said it was isolated. Made her uncomfortable. She frowned. She called it the place with the broken clock. A grandfather clock in the front hallway that had stopped and nobody ever fixed. She said it bothered her. Taegwon looked up sharply from his phone. "Yangpyeong. That's the maternal property. I've seen it in an asset disclosure." Jushin was already putting on his jacket. "I'm coming," Bella said. He turned. "I'm coming," she said again. Not loud. Just absolutely certain. He held her eyes for 2 seconds. Then nodded. 40 minutes out of Seoul. They drove mostly in silence. At some point in the dark of the back seat, Jushin's hand came down and gripped hers. Not tender, not romantic. Just the grip you give someone when you're waiting for something to begin and you need to know they're real and they're there. She gripped back. Then it released, and they were both looking straight ahead, and neither of them mentioned it. The security team went in first. Yoon Iraq was there. An associate beside him, younger, who folded the moment the door came open. Yoon himself looked at Jushin with the face of a man who has been caught and hasn't decided what to do with his features yet. Haeon was in a side room on a dusty couch, iPad in his lap, chip bag in his hand, looking deeply put out. He looked up when Bella came through the door. "You took forever," he announced. "This place doesn't even have good snacks." She crossed the room and caught him and held on. He let her hold on. Which, for Haeon, said everything. Jushin walked to Yoon Iraq and stood in front of him and said nothing. Just looked at him. 15 years between them, and the specific wreckage of it, and nothing in the world that could be said to be adequate. He didn't need to say anything. Taegwon was already on the phone with the prosecutors. The recording, the financial records, 4 weeks of careful assembly, it was already in motion. Yoon Iraq was arrested before midnight. The story broke 3 days later. Shin Group internal fraud. The silencing of CO Miran. A car on a wet road outside Incheon that didn't slide on its own. It was enormous. The kind of story that makes a city look at a family it thought it understood and realize it was only seeing the outside. Jushin gave one statement. Clean. Controlled. He said Miran's name carefully, the way you say the name of someone you want people to actually hear. He cleared her. Publicly. Formally. He made sure that everyone who had whispered about a convenient accident understood exactly what had happened, and who had done it, and what it had cost. Seo Lim watched the news broadcast alone in the kitchen and let herself cry, because there was nobody there to see it except the walls, and the walls had been keeping bigger things than this for years. The months that followed were slow the way healing is slow. Not straight. Not clean. There were bad days. Jushin behind a closed study door, Duyul outside it with his green blanket pressed to his chest, just waiting, because that was who Duyul was and always would be. There were days when the house was loud with something that felt startlingly like ordinary life. Haeon yelling about something. Duyul calmly, methodically contradicting him. Bella at the counter, mediating with the patience of someone who had spent a decade studying children and was still somehow surprised every single day by how much she loved these two specifically. Taegwon came around slowly, the way careful people do. He made no announcement about it. He just gradually stopped being pointed when he spoke to Bella at family dinners, and that was enough. It was Haeon who arranged the confession. Of course it was. He and Duyul had been running surveillance for weeks. Duyul providing quiet analysis, Haeon providing operational energy, and they had collectively determined that their father was taking too long about something important and needed to be moved along. Haeon approached at breakfast with the directness of someone who has genuinely never understood why people dance around things. "Appa," he said, mouth still full of toast. "You need to tell Miss Bella that you like her." Jushin set down his coffee. "Excuse me. You look at her different from how you look at other people," Duyul said from behind his bowl, not looking up. "We both noticed," Haeon confirmed. The two of you need to. She likes you too, Haeon continued. She smiles different when you come home. Not the regular smile. The other one. He took another bite of toast. There are two smiles. There are two smiles, Duyol agreed. Jushin pressed two fingers to his forehead and looked at the ceiling. That evening the boys were supposedly asleep. They were not asleep. They were lying with their ears pressed to the floor above the garden, which Haeon had identified earlier in the week as an excellent listening position. Jushin found Bella in the garden as the last light went gold over the skyline. He sat down in the chair beside her. She looked over. You look like you've survived something. I've been interrogated by two 5-year-olds. She pressed her lips together. Lost the fight. Smiled. He was quiet for a moment. Then he turned slightly toward her and said, I want to say something. And I want to say it right, because I've spent the last several months being honest with myself about what I actually feel versus what I thought I was supposed to feel. And I'm not going to get this wrong. She went still. I know what brought you here, he said. I know the promise you made and how long you carried it. I know what kept you in this house when things got hard. He looked at her directly. That's not what this is. I didn't fall for the idea of completing some story. I fell for who you are. The way you held this house together while it was breaking. The way you looked at my boys like they were everything and never once asked for anything back. The way you told me the truth when it was the hardest possible thing to say. He paused. I love you. That's all. I'm not asking you to do anything with that tonight. It was time to say it out loud. Bella looked at him in the warm evening air. Her eyes were bright, balanced right on that edge. You know what she told me? She said softly. Miran. She said if I ever met you I'd understand immediately why she couldn't stop loving you. She said you were infuriating and guarded and extraordinary. She smiled. She was right about all three. He reached over and took her hand. She let him. Upstairs, there was a muffled thud and then Haeon's loud whisper, which was absolutely not a whisper. Duyol. Duyol. They're holding hands. Duyol. Much quieter. I know. I can see. I told you. Jushin closed his eyes. They're awake. They were never asleep, Bella said. Weeks later. A regular Saturday morning. Cereal on the counter, cartoons too loud. Duyol's rock collection inexplicably spread across the hallway floor again. Haeon looked up from his bowl and said to Bella, easy as breathing. Mom, can I have more orange juice? The word landed in the room like something precious dropped from a great height. Duyol looked up. Seolim went still at the sink. Jushin set down his coffee. Haeon blinked, looking around at all of them. What? Did I say something wrong? No, Bella said. Her voice was perfectly steady. Her eyes were not. You said something exactly right. She poured his orange juice. Jushin looked at her across the cereal boxes and the scattered rocks and the two loud Saturday morning cartoons. He reached across the counter and took her hand. Duyol went back to his breakfast with the quiet, satisfied expression of someone who has been waiting a long time for things to settle into the shape they were always supposed to be. Haeon grabbed his juice. The house was loud. Loud in all the right ways. Exactly loud enough. If this story got to you, and I really hope it did, hit that like button right now. It takes 2 seconds, and it genuinely helps more people find stories like this one. And if you want to be here the moment the next one drops, subscribe and turn on your notifications. Don't miss it. Now tell me in the comments, which moment hit you the hardest? Was it the twins running to Bella the first day? Was it Miran's voice on that recording? Or was it that Saturday morning when Haeon said mom like it was the most natural thing in the world? I read every single comment. Drop yours below. I'll see you in the next one.